All right, howdy, howdy. We are live here. It is another Wednesday, hump day. We have made it yet kind of through halfway through another week. Hello, Crystal Cherry. How
Hey
are you
there.
doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to have you here. I'm pumped. You're someone who's just full of joy, full of energy, and I love talking to you. So it's going to be fun to have this conversation to talk about something that you are an expert in. This
Yeah.
is the Liftoff series. We are helping organizations and businesses lift off and grow, right? Thinking about things like branding and marketing and building a business, building a board. That's what we're going to talk about today,
Yes.
and having the biggest impact that you can have. So, why don't you just start us off and give us a quick intro on who you are, Crystal M.
Yeah.
Cherry?
Thanks, Taylor. I'm so excited to be here, and particularly with you. You have become such a wonderful friend and advisor to me in this last year or so, and so I'm excited to be here on your show. My name is Crystal Cherry. I live here in Atlanta, Georgia, and I am a nonprofit professional, 23-year trained fundraiser, recovering fundraiser, now turned board consultant. So I've been working with boards in the last year or two to help nonprofits build effective boards. And I am loving the space and I am loving the work. And particularly now, in light of all that's happened in this last year and a half, we have really learned that who's at the top matters. And that has been my mantra for a couple years. And so it has proven to be true. So I've been doing this work for a while. I love it. Personally, I'm a mom. I'm a super mom of an 11-year-old boy. I'm a native New Yorker. We talked about like my love for Snickers, um, my love for purple. I'm in Toastmasters, and so I'm honing my speaking skills and trying to smile and be animated when I talk. So those are the things about me that makes me me. But yeah, that's what's going on.
I love it. And you've got amazing blue nails today. Show us your nails because, like, I love your
Yes,
glitter.
baby blue. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Well, so let's get into the topic of building a diverse board. So that's what you do. That's what you help organizations do. It's what you're an expert in. And like you said, yeah, uh, things that have happened over the past year. It's like, hey, people, we got to pay attention to this.
Yes.
Let's
Yes.
do this. I love your mantra. Who's at the top matters. So let's just get into it. My first question for you is I really want to get into, let's say, an executive director is in a place where they know it's time to change the composition of the board. Maybe a lot of organizations are reflecting on this right now and thinking we need to have a more diverse board, not even just in terms of what you maybe think about in terms of diversity, but thought process, race, religious background, a lot of different types of
Skill
things come
set.
into
Yes.
that. So
Yes.
talk to us about what that means and how one can identify when it's changed, time to change the composition.
Right. Well, first of all, the executive director can't make that decision silo. They have to work with the board chair. That's something that they would discuss together. And the board chair really is the person responsible for changing the board composition. The executive director is there to support. But I think they should sit down and decide, take a look at their current board to see what it looks like. And what we're finding is that, we're learning that a lot of boards are still old white men, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so now with all that's happened, we have board chairs and executive directors looking around saying, hey, wait a minute. We need some women on our board. We need some people of color, or we need someone from the community that we're serving on our board. We need some younger thought, younger people on our
Mm-hmm.
board. And so they're looking around. So what I suggest is that they do complete a board matrix where they can kind of sit down and write
Mm-hmm.
out all of those things. Like how many women do we have? How many men do we have? How many black folks, white folks, what are the age ranges? And then skill sets, like how many people do we have in banking? How many people do we have who are artists? How many people who are fundraisers? Who are our legal people? And then what are our needs? Like, let's look at our strategic plan to see what our needs are moving forward in the next 4 or 5 years. Wait a minute, we don't have any folks on our board who have social media experience, and that's definitely something in this time, in this era, that we need. And so we need someone who's an influencer who can really get out there and tell our story for us. And so completing that matrix will help you to determine what's missing, like what are the gaps. And then once you go there and you get that completed, then you could say, okay, these are the folks that we need. These are the skill sets that we're looking for. So we know now when we cast a wide net, because that's what we have to do now. We're going to be looking for people who can fill in all of those holes. And so I think as diverse as possible in terms of gender, in terms of race, in terms of age, in terms of skill set,
Hmm.
all of that is going to bode well for boards now.
Yeah, what are some things that you typically find happening when you work with an, or because you, I think, work with organizations to sit down and help them with that matrix oftentimes. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So,
And
what
it
are some things that happen in that process that you find?
Well, there's an aha moment often when they realize, so and so's been on the board for 14 years.
Hmm.
Maybe it's time. He hasn't really been engaged. He hasn't really been coming to meetings. Maybe it's time for him to roll off. Where are those bylaws, by the way? Who's seen
Hmm.
the bylaws recently? What are the term limits? Are we adhering to those? It's time for Jim to go. He's been on the board 14 years. We need this seat for someone who is new and has diversity of thought and who will really be passionate about our work now. Jim was at one time, but it's faded now. And so I think the aha moment when people realize that who they have on their board may not be serving them well, and
Hmm.
if they're folks who are alligators instead of allies, people who are cantankerous and agitators, it's time for them to go because we have work to
Hmm.
do, and we need to make some changes. So I think there's an aha moment when you do board matrices, and then there's a realization that, wait a minute, we may not have our net cast wide enough. We don't have a lot of folks in our sphere of influence who are people of color, or we don't know a lot
Hmm.
of young people who are professional and who could do this work, or maybe we need to add some gay and lesbian folks to our board. Maybe we need to find
Hmm.
some folks who are homeless or have a handicap, whatever it is. We don't really have those people in our sphere of influence, so we don't even know where to look. We don't even know where to begin. And so that's where I come in and start talking to them about the work they do, about the industry that they're in, the region that they're in. So I'm doing a board search right now for an organization that is in Keller, Texas, and they're only looking
Hmm.
for people in Keller, Texas, which
Hmm.
means me here in Atlanta has to do a lot of research and a lot of outreach to businesses, to churches, um, civic organizations, the local organizations in Keller, to try to find the right individuals to serve on that board. So often they realize that they don't have their net cast wide enough to find the kind of people that they're looking for.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned people in the community. You mentioned a variety of all different types of people. Again, it's really about bringing in different perspectives, and I like that you gave the example of, someone who's been serving on the board for 14 years. They're stale. You
Yes,
got important work to do. Like sometimes if someone's stale, it's time to get the boot, right? It's time
yes,
to bring in some new diversity of thought and diversity of background and diversity of experience. Like you said, looking at skill set is
yes,
so important because organizations ask their board members to do things and to be a part of it. And
right.
so having a variety of skill sets, it's so important. And I'm grateful that you mentioned that. So let's get into um, identifying board members of color and your recommendations there. What can nonprofits do to do that and to be successful in it and bringing the right people of color in on the board?
Right. Well, the first thing I suggest they do is they look inward, right? First, let's look
Hmm.
at our staff members, our board members, our volunteers. Do we have stakeholders in our community now who are people of color who we may not have asked? We may not have tapped into their networks. Let's start with them to say, listen, we realize that we need to do a better job of bringing more diverse voices to the board. And you may have people who you work with, who you go to church with at the gym, on your son's basketball team, in your local Rotary, that you interact with on a daily basis, on a regular basis, who might be a good fit. And we've never even thought to
Hmm.
ask you. So before we start looking even outside of the organization, let's look inside the organization to see what resources you currently have that might be sitting right in your face that you had never really thought about. So I say start there. And then once you've done that, hopefully that'll yield you a couple of people, and if not, then you might need to start looking externally. And as I mentioned, there are all kinds of non-traditional resources now that we can consider that maybe years ago we wouldn't have. So definitely social. Looking on LinkedIn, I'm doing a whole lot of cold outreach on social on LinkedIn for the search that I'm doing in Keller, just because they have such a specific area that they're looking for people in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm literally Googling businesses and people who live in Keller, Texas, to see if they might be interested in serving on this board. So don't, and that's free, right? There's no charge to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google and go on LinkedIn and social for that. Again, I mentioned civic groups because there are all kinds of moms groups. If they're in the Black community, there is Mocha Moms, there are Jack and Jill, there is the Links. There's a lot of civic organizations where you're going to find some Black professionals. You're going to find 100 Black men. You're going to find some sororities and fraternities, fraternal groups. You might have an NAACP chapter in your community. Just all kinds of groups in your community that you may not have considered and you may not have ever had contact with. But this is now the time for you to do the research and find out who those leaders are.
Mm-hmm.
And then, also, shoot, I was just on Clubhouse the other day. People are starting groups for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are using it for social and personal, or some people are using it for professional. And so you might even want to start a group for individuals who are interested in serving on boards. And
Mm-hmm.
then, every time you have a search, I'm thinking about doing that as a board consultant. Every time I have a search, just drop in and say, this is the organization I'm featuring this month. And I really want to know, are you passionate about education? Do you live in Texas? Are you really interested in organizations that support girls? So whatever it is, but there are non-traditional ways now that we can start looking for board members that we maybe not had considered before. And the other thing I suggest, Taylor, is people start looking early, even when they're not looking for a board member right now.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So identifying someone who you think, you know what, we don't have a board seat right now, but I know so and so is going to roll off the board in a year or 6 months. I see Angie over there. She's been doing some great things in the community. Let me reach out to Angie and start to get to know her, maybe sponsoring her, helping her in her career, so that when this seat opens up a year from now, Angie will be primed to just move right into this space, and so you don't have to worry about searching far and wide when you have an opening.
I love that. That's a great tip. I was typing that tip into the comments for anyone who's watching, just sort of like collect some of our top tips here. So, okay, you mentioned Clubhouse and how you've been popping in on there. And it's it's funny. I saw someone post a meme the other day about like, oh, Clubhouse, it's so Q1 2021. And everybody got really excited about it. Do you have any specific groups or clubs you've been popping into that have been interesting for you for board recruitment? Any recommendations there in Clubhouse specifically?
I have not yet. I've been doing mostly personal stuff. So
Okay.
single moms,
Mm-hmm.
moms too. My son is adopted, so some adoption groups and things like that. So I've been using it mostly for personal. But I've been thinking about starting a group because I've just been kind of observing.
Yeah.
I love that I can leave quietly. I
Mm-hmm.
can go into a room and listen and then leave quietly. And so I've just been thinking maybe I would start a group for folks interested in serving on board. So it's just kind of something that just popped into my head. But I think
Yeah.
it's a great idea, and it's a wonderful way for you to attract people who you may not normally get to meet. So
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to check in with you in a month and see if you started that group. Okay. I'm going to be on you. Is there a Snickers, like a Snickers lovers group in there that you found?
I should check. I'm trying to cut back on the Snickers because I have some COVID pounds now that I'm trying to get rid of. But yeah,
We
I should check to see. You are so funny. You should
don't
check
feel
that
bad about
queso
that.
group. I know you love queso.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Get me off the cheese sauce. All right. So, okay, I've got a couple of more questions here I want to get into with you. Let's talk a little bit about board member dues. A lot of board members do come with a fundraising commitment and/or dues. So, and that can be a factor sometimes affecting diverse board membership. What can boards do to address that issue?
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with someone about that this morning, and I'm a baby boomer. I come from old school way of doing things, and I had a mindset that there should be a minimum amount set for board dues so that people know
Mm-hmm.
coming in what the expectation of them is. And whether or not this is the right board for them, because if someone contacts me and says the board dues is $10,000, this is not the right board for me. I can't afford that. Right. So I know right off the top, this is not for me. But there is something to be said about what's happening now and the fact that so many people have been excluded from serving because of the financial responsibilities. But there are so many other ways that people can give and support fundraising without them having to be the person to actually, you know, dove out the dollars. And so I think nonprofits need to be a little bit more flexible now, particularly if you know that you need younger people on your board, or if you're looking for someone who has a disability because that's the community that you serve, and you know that their resources are limited financially. I would definitely say that perhaps they need to review whether or not the current dues is excluding people who
Mm-hmm.
may be able to serve the organization in other ways, because there's something about life experience. There's something about a person who can bring lots of connections, so who can go on social media and tell your story like nobody else, and all of that is going to contribute, if done right, it's going to contribute to the bottom line. So I do think we need to start reconsidering whether having minimum dues is
Mm-hmm.
necessary. Maybe we make it, maybe we make it minimal so that most people can, $50 or $100, most people probably can do in the course of a year. So maybe just say a minimum of $50 so that you have 100% giving, but so that you're not excluding people who would want to serve, who can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Opening up the opportunity and not
Yes.
excluding people. I think that's important. Get creative, people.
And then the other
You
thing
know.
is doing things like having, I talk about being, sensitive cultures, having board meetings in
Mm-hmm.
locations that are accessible to people, right? And so if you're having it
Yeah.
way out in the suburbs and I don't have a car, or I take the train to work every day. I remember leaving a board meeting one time and it was late, and saw a woman who was came down the elevator together, and she walked out the door. And as I was pulling out of the parking garage, I saw her walking. It was getting dark. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, where is she going? And so I pulled over. I said, hey, Lacey, how are you? What's going on? Where are you going? Well, I'm headed to the train station. I'm like, that's 4 blocks from here, and it's getting dark. I said, do you always walk to the train station? And she said, yes. I said, does anyone know that? And
Mm-hmm.
she said, well, I don't know, I never dawned on me to mention it. But those kinds of things, being sensitive to the fact that you have a woman walking 4 blocks to the train by herself when it's getting dark, maybe we should have
Mm-hmm.
it at a location. Maybe we should have it earlier in the day, and not put people at risk who are wanting to serve. So there's just things that we can do to be
Yeah.
sensitive to folks who may not want to serve because of those reasons. I mean, boards are shrinking, Taylor, because of
Mm-hmm.
time commitment, because there's so many nonprofits out there now. Boards that used to be average about 19 or 20 are now down to about 15 is the average size of a board. And so
Mm-hmm.
boards are shrinking, and many, many boards are looking for board members right now because of that. So
Is there a good size of a board? Does it depend on the size of the organization? Talk to me a little bit about that. I don't know.
it does. It does. We recommend 7 or more. We want to have an odd number so that
Mm-hmm.
we can have a quorum and make decisions.
Mm.
But I say based on the size of your organization, I say somewhere around 13 or so, depending on the size of your organization, is a good number. I've had boards that I've worked with that are like 25, 26. I think that's really getting into some messiness. It's just hard to make decisions and to have
Mm.
a quorum and to keep that many people engaged. I have worked with boards that had 55 to 60 people. That is just a hot mess waiting to happen.
Whew.
So,
That'll make you eat Snickers and queso. Jeez.
but yeah, definitely
Whew.
things like your budget,
Mm-hmm.
your staff, the number of staff you have, the numbers of people you're serving, like all those things matter in terms of size. But I think more important than size is just having the right composition and the right people advocating for you.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about age too and gender.
Hmm.
Um, because I do think the age thing probably, I don't know, you might experience this when you're helping organizations with their board recruitment and board
Yeah.
building.
Well,
It's often people probably take the easy way out, and maybe trying to meet younger audiences is something where it feels outside of their comfort zone. Talk to us about that.
yeah, I mean, and having younger people on your board, it's really an advantage to have younger people on your board. First of all, they, the younger generations are more interested in jumping in, rolling up their sleeves, and getting to work. They're concerned about the environment. They're
Hmm.
concerned about families, and they want to get their families involved in volunteering. Like their motivations for giving, of being involved, are very different than, let's say, baby boomers. And so
Hmm.
and same for women, right? And so having those folks on your board usually means that you're going to have folks who are active, who are going to be at that event, who are going to be at that volunteer opportunity, packing those boxes and rolling up their sleeves. And so having those folks who really care about the environment, we want to make sure we're recycling, and
Hmm.
things like that. And the women are going to want to make sure that their small children understand the importance of giving back. So they want opportunities where they can volunteer as a family. So the
Hmm.
younger folks really bring some activism. They're interested in social justice, and so they're going to bring some
Hmm.
activism to the board that maybe your younger folks who are just too tired. The kids are grown; they don't have the same energy anymore. We also found that folks who have board members who are young, 35 and younger, and who women heavy boards do a better job of fundraising.
Hmm.
And probably for that same reason, because we're out there rocking and rolling, we're advocating, we're telling our friends, we got our book club. Women, we get involved in stuff.
Hmm.
We got our book clubs involved. We have our moms groups involved.
Oh, we like to talk in a lot of different forums.
Yes.
Yeah. Hmm.
Look, let's sell some Girl Scout cookies. We'll do it in a
Yeah.
minute.
Exactly. And we're persistent too. We'll get in front of your face with those cookies.
Tell I got some allergy stuff going on here, so don't think I'm crying.
Oh, you're good. Yeah. Well,
But
I
cheers.
have that effect on people, Crystal. You should know this by now. Well, let's get in. I've got one more question, and then I want to ask you about your ebook that you just
Oh
released.
yeah, great.
So, we can talk us through that. But my last kind of big question for you is: people working within the staff of the nonprofit organization, different leaders at the nonprofit, how involved should they be in board recruiting and the focus on diversity and equity inclusion in the board when they have their other job they're doing at the organization?
Right. Well, I don't really think that the board can do a great job of working on inclusion and equity and all the things that we're working on if it's not happening inside the organization first, right? And so I
Hmm.
think it starts inside the organization and permeates out. And so prayerfully, there's a task force on the staff side that is working to make sure that the environments internally, the culture internally inside the organization is inclusive, and that people have
Hmm.
a sense of belonging that can kind of permeate out and over to what the board is doing. So I think definitely your task force on your staff side should be working with the folks on your board to let them know what they're doing internally, what policies they're looking at that might have some insensitivities to them, to women and to minorities. And how that's working so that their board can take heed and maybe do some things on their side. So I think there definitely should be some communication between the two.
Hmm.
In terms of recruitment, I think staff can make suggestions, as I mentioned earlier. But board work and staff work is different. So I want to be clear about that. But I do think that there should be some communication. I think the board should know who the key members of staff are and vice versa. I
Hmm.
mean, it's the worst thing is to be in the mall and pass somebody, you're on the board and you pass somebody who works for the organization you're serving and you have no clue who that is. And
Yeah.
so I do think there should be opportunities where the executive director can bring in staff from time to time, especially if they've done something wonderful. When we have those mission moments on our agenda, when we have our brag moments where we're talking about something that we've done, some grant that we've been awarded, or some big gift that we closed, or some program that has done something wonderful, bring that program director in so that they can talk about what they've accomplished, or bring that grant writer in so that they can brag a little bit about the grant they just closed, so that the board can see the good work that's going on inside the organization, and also who's doing the work, right? And so that there's already
Mm-hmm.
some synergy, so
Yeah.
that when it comes time to talk about inclusiveness, you don't have two complete strangers trying to talk about a really insensitive and heavy topic who don't know each other and don't know anything about each other's work. So I do think
Yes.
there are opportunities for the staff and the board to work together to make sure there's a culture of inclusiveness inside the organization and on the board.
Absolutely. No reason to keep everyone at an arm's length apart from each other, right?
Mm.
Just because they're on the board and you're a staff member. I love that. Give the staff the opportunity to get in front of the board and show them the work they're doing. Love
Yes.
that. I love that. All right. So tell us about so you do a lot of board workshops and a lot of trainings with people in
Yes.
person. And you
Yes.
recently wrote an ebook. It's available online if people want to go get that digital version where they can kind of learn about your workshops. It's called Silence is Not Golden. Tell us about what that is and what people can expect to it if they need a resource like this.
Yeah, so I did a workshop for Bloomerang last year. It was called Silence is Not Golden, Training Your Woke Boy About Racial Inequities. And to my surprise and pleasure, it was very well received. And I got so much feedback from people who asked me to repeat that workshop over and over again. And so I decided, why not just create the content in the form of an ebook, and people can essentially experience the workshop at their own time, at their own pace. And we can take all the information that I talked about and put it in a place where they can all look at it, and maybe on their own do their own small training on how
Mm-hmm.
to get your board to become more woke. And so with your help, Taylor, I was able to create an ebook, really just kind of capturing everything that we talked about in the workshop, but giving people an opportunity to ask questions and write down their thoughts about what is it like to be woke. Where
Mm-hmm.
have you gone to find board members who are of color, or board members who are diverse? Like, just give them an opportunity to write down the role play that I did in the workshop, which was so popular. I included it in the e-workbook to give people an opportunity to maybe role play it with their board members without me. To see how boards resolve conflict, to see how board members are responding to insensitivity and tension that may happen
Mm-hmm.
because of unintentional comments and or behavior, or sometimes intentional,
Mm-hmm.
that board members experience with one another, and ways to resolve those conflicts. So I'm very excited about the ebook. It's, I think, a 15 pages or something like that. It's like 35, 37 bucks, really affordable. And so go to my website or click on that link that Taylor's put in the chat and check
Yeah.
it out. And if you want to have the webinar in live, I'm happy to do it for you. This ebook it will be a little cheaper. It's a little cheaper option, but I'm happy to come and do it live if you prefer that. But this is a great opportunity for you, for a small price, to dig into
Yeah.
your own training, be proactive and intentional, and do some small work with your board on your own without having to have a facilitator. So I'm excited about this opportunity for boards and
Yeah.
staff. Yeah.
I think the role playing exercises in there. It's a good mix of role playing and resources, and it's
Yes.
a little bit of board therapy that everybody needs.
I like board therapy. That's great.
Board
Yes.
therapy. That's what you do. They should do. I do board therapy. That's your new tagline. Bing, bang, boom. We got it. All right. Well, I am going to drop in the comments a link to that ebook. It's a pleasure to help you with that, as always. And
Yes.
if people want to get in touch with you, if they do want to actually hire you for more help with board recruitment, board building, board awakening, any of the above, what's the best way to
Conflict
reach you?
resolution, board
Yeah,
fundraising.
so many things.
Yes, they can visit my website at theboardpro.com, and there will be my contact information and a little bit more about me and my services and the clients that I've served in the past, and ways that I could possibly help you or work with you. So please check me out. And if you're in need of some service, please give me a holler.
All right. Well, hey, Christal M. Cherry, thank you. I like saying your full name. It's just a fun name. Christal M. Jerry. Thanks for joining. I think this is a really important topic. I know, I mean, you and I both do a lot of nonprofit work. It's clearly a topic that's hot on a lot of nonprofits' minds right now. So I appreciate you coming on to talk about this,
Yay.
to give
Thanks
people
for
some
having me.
insight. Yeah, thank you. All right, folks. Next time we are live again next week and at 11 a.m. Eastern. This is the Liftoff series, helping you think differently about your business, your marketing, your brand, your nonprofit venture, so that you can lift off and grow. All right. We'll see you next time.
Take care. Bye.